I am the author of Things to Do When You're Off in the Country and 100 Times a Memoir of Sexism. I'm also currently the executive director of A Gathering of the Tribes. A Gathering of the Tribes magazine online publishes poetry, fiction, and nonfiction, and we are open for submissions. So for all of the poets out there, you can go to tribes.org and look at the submissions page and send in your work. We would love to have some new work from you. Anyway, that's my little pitch. I usually have been reading fiction, and I always feel so exposed when I'm reading my poetry. So I kind of like that it's a intimate audience, as they say. I'm going to read to you, first of all, starting from a collection of poetry that I've been working on for quite a while, but that isn't finished, called Your Poverty is Tasteless. A lot of my work deals with class issues because I come from a very poor area of rural America on the border of the South and the Midwest. And this first poem that I'll be sharing is entitled Green Zircon. Poverty's fertile plant roots at the base of the trimmed pond willow, whose weep is not permitted to touch ground now, because nearby trailer park children liked to hide there and shout obscenities at the moment golfers swung their pricey sticks against dented orbs. Over the years since I last saw you, you have turned 16, and your expression has fallen lower than the shadowed sand trap, and your eyes seem to be digging themselves deeper instead of out. Each day, our family places 2 pills before you. A sun pill, a star pill, to bury your moon calves, smooth the loose dirt over your wailing bastard. You willingly swallow the means of your constraint. I find it stunning how your throat guides its own oppression bobbing past Adam's apple, and the tiny tickling noise your tongue makes against ice water as our stern and beloved grandmother watches, barely nodding, as your sunken eyes meet mine in the silent bed of a prisoner knowing someone else in the room knows they are innocent. Innocence's tears wet the blades as we walk in the medicated silence of midnight over the grounds of the empty golf course. You lead me to the castrated weeping pond willow and silently snatch up a toad with the quick snatch of a boy familiar with nature's stealth. I flinch and you assure me you are done killing things that are not yourself, at least for now. You apologize for dead rabbits, birds, thousands of dismembered insects, emerald mush like this toad's brilliant skin flashing under the assault of your light. Its glassy eyes moving in ripples, plasmic spheres, deciphering nothing of our humanity. It seems to be pointing to something very near us that I will never perceive. You hold the frog like a pistol, pointing to apologies for dead rabbits. And I realize you are still young enough to be honest. You apologize for the insects you killed, but I recall the molesting of the dog and your pregnant mother pushed down the stairs most vividly. I do not mention or seek recourse for your childhood atrocities, but wish to apologize to you, and no forgiveness will never be found, not even possibly snatched from the imperceptible shadows. We are unforgivably American. Violence is seeping from you, wetting your stiffened skin and rippling your eyes to unconscionable revenge, deciphering everything of humanity. I touch its gooey head before it's released into the water, sending a small splash unsettling the surface, never reaching the water's edge, where poverty's fertile plant roots at the base of the trimmed pond willow, whose weep is not permitted. Thank you. And I see the hands waving, although I am reading it to the void. Yeah, so the poems, sometimes the poems I write are small and subtle like that and about family, and sharing them in readings. I don't know, is this better on the page or better in a reading, but I thank you for taking the time to sort of sit with these more subtle things today. And now I'm going to move on. I don't know how subtle this is. This is a found poem. Since I'm staying on the subject of like familial poverty and generational poverty right now. This is from the same collection, Your Poverty is Tasteless. This is titled Immeasurable Distance, and it's a found poem because it is an exact quote from my mother from many years ago. Your brother and me go walking every night down that trail out by the field. The other night, we found 2 decanters of whiskey in the ditch there alongside the trail. We just sat down and drank it till the sun left and then some. We got drunk as a couple of skunks. Your brother hasn't been the same since his best friend broke his arm and died from it. He was only 19, you know. Now, every morning, that Indian figure on the shelf turns itself toward the hallway, I swear. And that's not all. Every night, that watch on the table that belonged to him, it beeps at 8:58 p.m. and 12 noon sharp. It's been doing that for 2 years now. Sissy, I got a strange feeling about the ocean in New York. If I were you, I'd come back here, or make damn sure you know a quick way to get to higher ground. Do you feel like you've got good people out there in that city you can rely on, just in case something were to happen? Thank you so much. Let's see. So that's a little bit of Your Poverty is Tasteless. And I think now I'm going to I will just continue on this path. We'll stay with Your Poverty is Tasteless for the whole reading. I'm going to move on to another sort of confessional familial poem. And this is called Remembering What It Was Like to Be 17. Here we go. I call you mother, and you are things like memories that have nothing to do with that word. Like the first time I snorted Coke through a rolled up 20. The first time I snorted Coke through anything or took it anyway, actually. But maybe that does have something to do with that word. That was sort of a motherly moment for you. You watched me in silence, allowing it, letting your 2 lines sink in, and there was care in your watching. It was like a marriage. You watched me with a watching that was like you were watching me get married. I was 17 and my hands were shaking, and that old boy, a friend of yours, pushed the mirror at me as you watched me beside me. You even touched my shoulder, and there was sadness in your watching, and there was assurance in your watching. And you seemed to be lovingly laughing at me with your eyes for being scared. You seemed to be laughing at me for being scared. Like I imagine other mothers laugh at their daughter's fear with sadness in their eyes at weddings. You even told me I didn't have to do it, but I did it anyway. My hands were shaking when I took the bill. That's when you told me I didn't have to do it. I bent to the mirror and I remember that moment so clearly. You watching me beside me beside me. I was standing on the other side of myself, whispering something in my ear in a language I could not speak. And those words had everything in them that had anything to do with the word mother and my name. Those words had a hammer and trees and your blood caked around a hole in the wall. My face reflecting in a creek and fires and piss and beer cans, our trash eating away the skin of the earth. And I translated those words into remembering the fact that I have a minor hereditary heart defect from my father's side of the family. And I wonder if I should take an aspirin before I snorted the cocaine. This didn't seem like an appropriate moment to bring it up, and I doubted you had any aspirin anyway, so I put my nose to the bill, and the little line seemed so long and thick. I wondered if I would live through this. But you had done at least twice that much, and you looked fine as you ever did, and you had lived through so much more. And I was your daughter, so I thought, I can live through this too. I sucked it up and the room shook, but my shaking stopped. And then your hand was on my back, patting me. And you looked at me like maybe you really just recognized me as the word daughter for the first time, or like I had just married you. And I was filled with the feeling that you were my mother, so I could live through anything, and would. Thank you so much for listening to this dark familial stuff. I'm going to just read one more final poem. And this is one I've read a couple of times this year, but I think it's a really good summation of this theme. So here we go. This is entitled 7 Gifts, and it was also previously published in a sensitive skin anthology, published by, well, or an Unbearables anthology, I think is what it is actually. I get those conflated sometimes. Anyway, thank you for listening. This is 7 Gifts. 1. De ego God gifu is Latin for the self is the gift of God. 2. Cut off these arms and take them down to the broke place of broken trees and give them back their broke arms. Cut off this tongue and unteach it unspeaking from the broke place of violence unarmed, in the forest of violence unspoken of armaments. 3. I have found the graveyard hanging above me like a gray, dying, hanging plant, hanging. I have watched the clouds turn to bones and grow heavy, dropping to the ground to be gnawed by relentless dogs. This does not mean we are rising. 4, be careful now. 5, I hear a woman on the radio saying, I never knew you could be dirty in so many ways. There's dirt, there's blood, there's sweat, there's animals. 6, remember when you said I talked funny like a British? Remember before how I was nailing fetus posters to abortion guilty highways in grandma's bonnets. And you knew God liked me better because I got to see Disney. Remember when I loved the president and wanted to win the wars? Remember Reagan? Remember work ethic, individual responsibility? Remember homeless? Remember when mom went to jail and when mom went to jail and when mom went to jail? Remember last month when mom went to jail? Remember how we thought drugs would save us? And how drugs did save your second kid because they took it away from you? Remember how white people are better? Remember how they divided us between our dads? Remember when we took acid and I married the tree? Remember the dead cow? Remember that black kid you beat up? Remember that black kid who beat you up? Remember how fucking poor you both were? Remember the gash above your eye and the bruised skin that looked like candy, purple and blue, glistening and swollen like flesh could gasp, you told me. We were just standing outside and we looked at each other. No one said anything. Then we just started hitting. It was like an invisible referee suddenly yelled, fight. Remember how I told you, you must be so stupid. What are you, stupid? Remember you were like, guilty as charged, guilty as charged. Remember the blood on your fists, the blood on the tree, the blood on those sheets. Remember living in motels. Do you remember that guy mom stabbed? Remember when I found you passed out in a pan filled with your own vomit and the stove was open heating the house and your girlfriend OD'd on meth that night? Remember the magician on Cirque du Soleil who pulled himself up by his bootstraps, hovering? Remember when your dad went to jail? Remember when you went to jail? Remember how they say went to jail like it's something you do voluntarily? Remember when anarchy became a punk rock song and how socialism is like Hitler? Remember the second stanza. Remember language poetry. Remember the sweating horse, the cigar statue Indian holding his hand palm up, how the sunlight seemed to tick. Remember pebbles. Remember riding in truck beds. Remember when you went to jail again? Remember when I left and mom tried to give me that gun and she said, don't worry, it's not registered. Remember how everyone's so patriotic. Remember when they hated the Russians, when they hated the Mexicans, when they hated the Muslims. Remember when they hated me? They never came out and said why, not to me anyway. Did they to you? Do you remember? Remember, they hate you too. Remember, they hate each other. Remember, everyone's gonna burn in hell. Remember, they hate themselves. Remember, they hate where they are and they hate what they do and they love their country. Remember how they love their country and hate their government. Remember how they vote. Remember how they like to torture things, animals, people, cheese. Remember how they must hate cheese. Remember Velveeta? Remember pit bulls, the mattress the rat bled on, and how clear the stars are. Remember being stoned beneath them. Remember how I held you. Remember how I left. Remember how you're still there. 7. Cut off these armaments and take them down to the place of trees and give them back their violence. Cut off these breasts and make them 2 suns, 2 pale suns to light your hiding sky. Cut off this unteaching and give them tongues back their broke speech armed, unspeaking in the forest, waiting in the broke trees, armed. Thank you so much.
Wow, 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 wow. Fabulous. Thank you, Chavisa. Thank you so much. That was really, really something special.